For more than 100 years, our whole game plan for saving nature has been pretty simple. Find a beautiful spot, draw a line around it, call it a park, and protect everything inside. But that entire strategy was built for a stable world. And our world? Well, it's not stable anymore. Climate change is forcing us to completely rethink everything we thought we knew about conservation.
So let's get right to the heart of it. The big question for this explainer. Why are these incredible places we've set aside, these arcs of biodiversity, slowly but surely becoming isolated islands? The answer, it turns out, is going to redefine how we think about saving nature itself. And here's the fundamental problem, the real mismatch. Our conservation strategy is static. It's based on fixed boundaries on a map. But the species living inside those boundaries, they're now mobile. As the planet warms up and habitats change, plants and animals are on the move, looking for cooler spots at higher elevations or further north. Our parks, well, they just can't move with them.
Now, this whole idea of species moving, it's not exactly new. In fact, you could say it's the oldest survival trick in the book.
I mean, if you look way back in the geological record, through ice ages, through massive warming periods, life has always found a way to adapt to huge climate shifts. And it usually did it with one main strategy: migration. Animals and plants would just move, sometimes for thousands of kilometers, across these vast, wide open landscapes, just following the conditions they needed to survive.
But, and this is a huge but, the situation today is profoundly different. We're now facing a combination of two factors that have created a uniquely dangerous scenario for wildlife. Okay, so first there's the speed of modern climate change. It's happening faster than anything we've seen in the deep past, which means species have to migrate faster than ever before. And second, the landscape itself is, well, it's broken. They aren't moving across wide open continents anymore. They're trying to navigate a world that we've chopped up with roads, cities, farms, and dams. This 1-2 punch has been called a deadly cocktail, and it's a fitting name. All this rapid change, combined with a broken landscape, means that even if a perfect new habitat exists for a species, it might be completely unreachable. The pathways are simply blocked.
So if the problem is disconnection, the solution has to be connection, right? And this is where the entire field of conservation science is making a major pivot.
The key concept here is something called landscape connectivity. And it's not about just drawing more lines on a map. It's about looking at the world from an animal's perspective and asking, how easy is it really to get from point A to point B? The goal is to lower the barriers we put up and give nature back the freedom of movement it has always relied on to survive. And to actually do this, conservationists are using a kind of toolkit with three main strategies. You've got ecological corridors, you've got stepping stones, and then there's something called matrix management. So let's break down what each of those actually is.
All right, let's start with the first two tools, and we can think of them with some pretty familiar analogies: wildlife highways and nature's rest stops.
Ecological corridors are, well, they're basically wildlife highways. They're these strips of natural habitat designed specifically to connect bigger core areas, like two national parks. They give animals a safe, continuous path to travel, which allows for everything from migration to genetic exchange.
And here's the thing: we know these corridors work. A huge scientific review, one that combines the results of tons of different studies, found that on average, corridors increase species movement between habitats by a staggering 50%. 50%! That is a massive boost for any population trying to adapt.
But what if you can't build a continuous highway? I mean, in a lot of developed areas, that's just not an option. That's where stepping stones come into play. Think of them as nature's rest stops. They're smaller, separate patches of habitat that let a species cross a dangerous landscape, not in one go, but in a series of shorter, much safer hops. But for these rest stops to actually work, they have to be designed really carefully. The spacing is absolutely critical. They can't be farther apart than an animal or a seed can travel. The size matters too, because bigger patches can support more life. And of course, the quality of the habitat inside that patch is key. It has to be a strategic network, not just a few random patches of green. Now, let's move on to the third and, you could argue, the most crucial part of this whole toolkit: managing the huge landscapes that lie in between our parks and pathways. This is what scientists call the landscape matrix, but really, it's just everything else. It's the farms, the working forests, the suburbs we live in.
And the condition of this matrix can absolutely make or break any connectivity plan. If it's too hostile, it can turn even the best park system into a bunch of useless, isolated islands. So the strategy here is to soften this matrix, to make it more wildlife friendly. This can mean a lot of things. It could be paying farmers to plant hedgerows, using forestry practices that leave some habitat behind, building greenways into our cities, or restoring the natural vegetation along rivers. It's all about making our working landscapes work for nature too.
So where does all this lead? What does it really take to build a connected landscape that's ready for the future?
Well, the first thing to remember is that animals don't carry passports. They don't see property lines or political borders. So true connectivity can't just be a patchwork of little projects. It demands massive cooperation across borders, between governments, private landowners, and industries. And it means we have to be flexible and treat these plans like living experiments that we monitor and adjust as we learn more.
And this, right here, might be the most important takeaway of all. Connectivity is a vital tool, an absolutely essential one, but it is not a silver bullet. It's a means to an end. At the end of the day, corridors and stepping stones can't replace the fundamental need for large, healthy, high-quality habitats. The goal is to connect these amazing core areas, not to replace them with skinny little pathways.
And that leaves us with a final question that kind of reframes this entire challenge. For a century, we've gotten really good at building parks. The task for the next century is to figure out how we build the pathways between them to create a truly connected, resilient web of life for a world that is and always will be on the move.